Alex Carter, a seasoned soldier from Earth, woke up in total darkness. His head throbbed, and his body felt like it had been smashed by a 100-ton hammer. He tried to move, but his arms were restrained, chained to a cold metal table. Panic flooded his chest as he realized he wasn't in his ship or on Earth anymore. The familiar hum of his military transport was gone, replaced by an eerie silence and the strange, faint whirring of advanced technology. He blinked, trying to focus his eyes, but it was no use. The room was dim, its walls smooth and metallic, glowing with a soft, unnatural light. Every corner seemed to shimmer with the kind of high-tech machinery Alex had only seen in classified reports. The air was thick, dry, almost sterile. His heart raced as he struggled to get free, but the restraints wouldn't budge. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the sound of footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, and echoing through the metallic chamber. Alex's mind raced as he fought to remain calm, pushing his panic aside. Whoever had captured him, they were clearly experienced, and he wasn't about to make things easier for them. He steeled himself, ready to face whatever was coming. The door to his cell slid open, revealing a figure in the doorway. She was tall, almost statuesque, with flawless, iridescent skin that shimmered like liquid metal. Her long hair fell in waves of silver, and her eyes, glowing violet, locked onto him with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. The woman stepped into the room, her presence commanding and powerful. "Ah." "The human," she said, her voice cold but rich with authority. "You will speak, or I will make you." Alex's jaw tightened. He had heard about alien species with telepathic abilities and advanced tech, but he had never imagined something like this. This woman wasn't just any alien. She was a Virilian, a species known for its ruthlessness and overwhelming technological superiority. His heart pounded as he realized she had likely been sent by the Virilian High Council, the power-hungry rulers of this part of the galaxy. "I won't tell you anything," Alex said, his voice gruff but steady. "You're wasting your time." She studied him for a moment, tilting her head slightly, before a small, amused smile tugged at her lips. "Oh, I don't think you fully understand your situation, human. You're not the one in control here. I am." Her words hung in the air like a threat. With that, she turned and walked across the room, her footsteps silent despite the weight of her steps. She waved her hand, and a shimmering holographic display popped up in front of her, projecting images of Earth, its cities, landscapes, and most importantly, military facilities. Alex narrowed his eyes, confused. Was she trying to intimidate him? "Tell me about Earth's defenses. Your planet is on the verge of war with the Virilians," she said, her tone flat but expectant. Alex stayed silent, refusing to give in. He wouldn't break. Not like this. He had been trained for situations like this. The best thing he could do was buy time, gather information, and wait for an opportunity to escape. But what struck him was how cold she seemed. Every action she made was calculated, deliberate. There was no emotion, just purpose. Her eyes never left him as she activated a device on her wrist, a thin beam of light shooting out to touch his restraints. The chains loosened, and Alex felt his hands free. He didn't move, though. There was no need to rush. He was still processing what was happening, still trying to figure out if this was a test, or if she was about to execute him. "I'll never give you what you want," Alex said, his voice stronger now. "You're wasting your time." The Virilian woman's gaze shifted. There was a flicker of something in her eyes, something that wasn't cold, wasn't calculating. It was almost human. It was the slightest break in her rigid exterior, but Alex caught it. The moment passed quickly, but it made him wonder, was she really as indifferent as she seemed? She stared at him for a long time before speaking again, her voice softer this time, though still filled with authority. "You believe you're the one in control here, don't you? That your silence means something." She paused, as if considering her next words carefully. "But you are just a tool. Just a piece in a game that is much larger than you. Alex frowned, his heart pounding. This woman wasn't just here to interrogate him. She was testing him, probing his defenses, trying to gauge how far she could push him before he cracked. For a moment, she stepped back and raised her hand, signaling the room's lights to brighten. The soft glow of the walls intensified, revealing the full scope of the chamber. It was massive, like a control center or some sort of war room. But it wasn't just the technology that caught Alex's attention. It was the intricate alien markings carved into the walls, glowing faintly in the light. He had seen similar symbols before, though they had always been out of reach in his research. They were ancient markings, the kind used by civilizations far older and more powerful than anything Earth had encountered. She was clearly no ordinary soldier. Alex narrowed his eyes. This was far from a normal interrogation, and what she said next confirmed it. "You're not just here because you're human," she said, her tone shifting again. This time, it was something else, something Alex couldn't quite place. "You're here because you matter. You're more than a captive. You're a symbol." A symbol. Alex's confusion deepened, and a wave of uncertainty washed over him. What kind of game was she playing? Why him? Just then, as if on cue, the door to the chamber opened again, and a voice crackled through the room's speakers. The woman looked over her shoulder and then turned back to Alex. "Our time is up, but rest assured, human, this is just the beginning." She gave him one last look before leaving, her footsteps echoing as the door slid shut behind her. Alex was left alone in the dark once more, his mind racing. What was the Virillian High Council planning? Why had she said he mattered? And who was this mysterious woman who had captured him, and somehow made him question everything? As the silence settled in, one thing was clear. This was only the start of something far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. Days passed, and the atmosphere aboard the Virillian ship felt even more oppressive than before. Alex Carter had grown used to the cold metal walls of his cell, though nothing about his captivity felt familiar. The silence of the place was unsettling, broken only by the occasional hum of machinery or the footsteps of guards passing by. Despite his restraints being removed, he still felt trapped, mentally as much as physically. He spent his time pacing the small, confined space, his mind constantly racing. What were the Virillians after? What did they want with him? He wasn't the first human they had captured, and he knew that many of the soldiers before him never made it back to Earth. They were either killed or used as tools for the Virillians' mysterious plans. But Alex wasn't ready to accept his fate just yet. His training had taught him that there was always a way out, as long as he stayed alert and patient. Despite his resolve, there was something different about this situation. It wasn't just the ship or the strange technology. It was her, Lyrana, the Virillian woman who had captured him. From the moment she entered his cell, he knew she wasn't like the others. There was an aura around her, one of power, yes, but also something deeper, something vulnerable that she seemed to hide behind her cold, commanding demeanor. Over the past few days, Alex had tried to keep his distance, but that became increasingly difficult. Lyrana had started coming to his cell at unexpected times, always watching him with her glowing violet eyes, like she was trying to figure him out. At first, she would stand silently, her expression unreadable, but soon she began speaking to him. "Tell me about Earth," she would say, her voice like a melodic hum. "What is it like? What does it mean to live there?" Alex had remained silent at first, not willing to give her anything. He could sense that she was probing, trying to learn more about his people, about their weaknesses. But with each passing conversation, something in her changed. She began asking different questions, ones that didn't seem to have anything to do with the mission. She wanted to know about his family, his life before the war, and even what kind of food humans ate. There was a curiosity in her that Alex couldn't ignore. "Why do you care?" Alex had finally asked one day, his voice blunt with frustration. "What does my life matter to you? I'm just a prisoner. Lyrana had paused, her eyes flickering with something unexpected. Sadness, maybe. It was only for a split second, but it was enough for Alex to notice. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked away, her gaze distant, as if she was lost in her own thoughts. "You think we are all the same," she said softly, her tone almost regretful. "You think we're all cold and emotionless. But I'm not like the others. I don't want this." Her words confused him. The Varillians were a race known for their strength, intelligence, and ruthless efficiency. They didn't show emotion, didn't need it. But something in Lyrana's voice suggested there was more to her than the icy facade she presented. Was she simply trying to manipulate him, or was there something real behind her words? As the days wore on, Alex began to feel a strange pull toward her. He had spent most of his life fighting against the Varillians and their kind. They were enemies, pure and simple. But Lyrana wasn't like the others. She seemed conflicted, torn between her orders and something deeper that she couldn't quite express. One evening, as Alex lay on the cold metal bed in his cell, Lyrana came to him again. This time, her steps were quieter, almost hesitant. She didn't speak right away, just stood at the edge of the cell, looking at him in silence. The air between them was thick with unspoken words. "You don't understand," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Varillian way is not what it seems. We were bred to be perfect, to be without weakness, without emotion. But there is nothing left to hold on to. We are empty inside." Her voice cracked slightly, betraying the mask of control she worked so hard to maintain. Alex's heart skipped a beat. He had heard rumors about the Varillian way of life, how their society valued logic over emotion, how they were trained from birth to be the perfect warriors and leaders. But hearing it from Lyrana, seeing the pain in her eyes, made him realize something he hadn't expected. She wasn't just an enemy. She was trapped too. "Why are you telling me this?" Alex asked, sitting up. He didn't know if he could trust her, but something told him this wasn't just another ploy to break him. Lyrana looked at him, her eyes softening for the first time. "Because I don't want to be like them anymore. I don't want to follow their orders blindly. I want to feel something. I want to understand what it means to be human." Alex didn't know how to respond. He had spent so much of his life hating the Varillians, believing that they were evil to the core. But this woman, this enemy, was showing him a side of herself he hadn't expected. A side that was just as broken as he was, if not more. For the first time since he'd been captured, Alex felt a flicker of empathy for Lyrana. It was a strange feeling, one that confused him, but he couldn't deny it. She wasn't just the enemy. She was a person. And maybe, just maybe, they weren't so different after all. Lyrana seemed to sense the change in him, her shoulders relaxing as she took a tentative step closer. "You think you're the only one who's suffering," she said softly. "But I've been living a lie my entire life. I've been taught to suppress every emotion, every desire. But now, with you, I want to understand. I want to learn." Alex's mind raced as he considered her words. He wasn't sure what to make of this sudden shift in their relationship, but one thing was clear. Lyrana was no longer just his captor. She was something more, a prisoner of her own people, just as he was. And though he didn't fully trust her, he couldn't deny that they were both caught in a struggle far bigger than either of them had anticipated. The days blurred together. Alex's world had become a repetitive cycle of waiting and wondering, the isolation of his cell slowly gnawing at him. The strange bond that had started to form between him and Lyrana was unsettling, especially considering she was the very enemy he had fought against for years. But despite his wariness, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeply human about her. She had shown him a side that even she seemed unsure of. A side that wanted to break free from the rigid control of her people. It had been another long, quiet night when Lyrana came to his cell again. This time, she didn't stand by the door like she usually did, watching him from a distance. She entered with a hesitation Alex hadn't seen before. Her face, usually an emotionless mask, was now open, betraying a vulnerability he hadn't noticed until now. She seemed different, tired, worn out, almost fragile. "Alex," she started, her voice shaky. "I need to talk to you." Alex looked up from his cot, a frown creasing his forehead. He had grown used to her visits, but tonight something felt off. He sat up straighter, unsure of what to expect. "What's going on, Lirana?" he asked, his tone cautious. She hesitated for a moment before stepping closer. "I'm not here to interrogate you," she said, almost in a whisper. "I've been thinking. I need your help." Alex's heart skipped a beat. "Help? You've been holding me captive for days, and now you need my help." He couldn't hide the disbelief in his voice. He was torn between suspicion and confusion. Why would she, a high-ranking Virelian, ask a prisoner for help? Lirana didn't answer immediately. She walked over to the small table in the corner of the cell, her back to him. Her shoulders were tense, and her body language was all but shouting her internal struggle. Alex watched her, trying to make sense of the situation. Finally, she turned around, and her eyes met his. There was a sense of rawness in her gaze, something he had never seen before. "I don't want to be like them anymore," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I don't want to be the person who follows orders without questioning them. I don't want to be the weapon I've been trained to be." Alex's mind was spinning. This wasn't the Lirana he had come to know in the past few days. This wasn't the confident, cold soldier who had captured him. No, this was a woman who seemed to be breaking under the weight of her own convictions. "What do you mean?" Alex asked, his voice softer now. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I've been a soldier my entire life. I was bred for this. My whole existence has been about serving the Virelian Empire, following orders without question. But I can't do it anymore. I can't keep living this lie. I've seen things on Earth, things that made me realize how wrong everything is. I don't want to destroy your people anymore. I want to help you." Alex blinked, trying to absorb her words. This was too much to take in all at once. He had always believed that the Virelians were unfeeling, emotionless creatures, bent on conquering and destroying whatever they could. But Lirana's words were causing him to question everything he had known about them. "I don't trust you," Alex said, his voice steady but with a hint of anger. "You're still one of them. You've been part of their army, part of the destruction they've caused. I can't just forget that." Lirana winced, the pain in her eyes deepening. "I know," she said softly, "but I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking you to see that I'm not the same as them. I'm asking you to understand that I'm trying to change." Alex couldn't bring himself to respond right away. His training as a soldier, his years of fighting against the Virelians, all of it was pushing him to reject what she was saying. But something about her, something about the raw honesty in her voice, was making him hesitate. Could it be possible? Could someone like Lirana really want to change, to break free from the rigid system she had been born into? "You're asking for my help," Alex said slowly, still unsure. "How do you expect me to help you?" Lirana's gaze softened, and she took a small step closer. "I don't know yet," she admitted, her voice quieter now. "But I need to get out of here. I need to leave the Virelian Empire behind. And I need someone to help me. I need you." For a moment, the room felt unbearably still. Alex couldn't believe what he was hearing. Here was his captor, the woman who had been his enemy for so long, now asking for his help. It felt surreal. Yet deep down, he could see the desperation in her eyes. This wasn't just some ploy. This was real. Lirana was seeking redemption, and in some strange way, she was asking him to help her find it. "What do you want from me?" Alex finally asked, his voice calm, though his heart was still racing. Lirana took a deep breath, and her shoulders sagged slightly, as if she were carrying a heavy burden. "I need a way out. I need to escape from the Virelian fleet. I can't do it alone. They will stop at nothing to bring me back." You're my only chance." Alex stared at her, unsure of what to make of the situation. She was asking him to help her escape, to betray everything she had ever known, and to side with him, the enemy. His mind raced as he weighed the consequences of his actions. He had been brought here as a prisoner, captured to die for the Varillians' cause. But now, everything had changed. He had never expected this, an enemy soldier asking for his help. And for the first time, Alex realized that this wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about something bigger than them both. "I don't know if I can trust you," Alex said quietly, still unsure. "But if you're serious, we need to work together. And it won't be easy." Lyrana nodded, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and hope. "I'm ready. I just need you to believe that I'm not the enemy anymore. I'm ready to fight for something else. For us." And in that moment, Alex knew that their paths were about to cross in a way neither of them could have predicted. They were no longer just captor and captive. They were something more, unlikely allies in a fight neither had ever expected to take on. The future was uncertain, but for the first time since his capture, Alex had hope. The next few days were tense. Alex and Lyrana's quiet meetings in his cell had become more frequent, though their conversations were always cautious, as if they were both afraid of what the other might do next. Alex had never imagined that he would find himself in a situation like this, working with his enemy. Lyrana, the woman who had been his captor, now wanted his help. It didn't make sense, but something in her eyes, the raw sincerity, kept him from rejecting her. Alex couldn't ignore the inner turmoil that churned inside him. He had been trained to fight against the Varillians, to destroy them, to never trust them. Yet Lyrana wasn't like the other soldiers he had fought. She wasn't just a mindless killer, following orders. She was different. Alex couldn't explain it, but there was a human side to her that he couldn't overlook. And maybe that's what made the situation even harder. They had started to make plans. They needed to get off the Varillian ship. The ship was heavily guarded, but Alex had spent enough time in captivity to learn the layout. He had picked up bits and pieces of information from the guards and overheard their conversations, all while pretending to be a helpless prisoner. Lyrana had been working from the inside, using her position to gather intel for their escape. Together, they were starting to form a plan. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Lyrana had been increasingly reluctant to talk about her past. She spoke little about why she had turned against her people, but Alex could see it in the way she carried herself, like someone who had carried a great weight for too long. Her mind was clearly conflicted, but Alex knew that she was genuine. She wanted out. She wanted freedom. It was strange, but Alex found himself sympathizing with her. As much as he wanted to hate her for the things she had done, he couldn't. She wasn't the monster he had been led to believe. She was someone who had been trapped, just like him, just in a different way. "I know you don't trust me," Lyrana said one night, her voice low as she sat across from him in the small, dimly lit room. "But I promise you, I won't betray you." Alex didn't reply right away. He was staring at the floor, lost in thought. "How do I know that?" he asked, his voice rough. "How do I know you're not just using me to escape?" Lyrana's gaze softened, and she leaned forward slightly. "I can't give you an answer to that. All I can do is prove it to you, but you have to trust me, even if it's just a little bit. Otherwise, we'll never get out of here." Her words hung in the air, heavy and sincere. Alex didn't want to trust her, but as much as he tried to resist, he found himself softening. They had no other choice. She was right. They needed each other if they were going to survive. It wasn't long before their plan began to take shape. The Varillian ship was large, but it wasn't impenetrable. There were weaknesses, blind spots in their security that Alex had noticed. He had been a soldier for too long not to recognize them. Together, he and Lyrana worked in secret, avoiding the guards and slipping through the hallways unnoticed. Lyrana's knowledge of the ship's inner workings gave them an advantage, and Alex's skills in combat and stealth made him a valuable asset. One evening, As they sat in the dark shadows of the cell block, Lyrana finally opened up about her past. It was a rare moment of vulnerability, and Alex listened quietly as she spoke. "I was born into this," she said, her voice steady but with an underlying sadness. "I didn't choose to be a soldier. I didn't choose this war. But I was trained to believe it was my duty, my purpose. We were taught that the Virillian Empire was the only way forward, that the galaxy would be better off under our control. But when I saw Earth, when I saw what your people have, your resilience, your courage, I realized how wrong everything was." Alex could hear the pain in her voice, the conflict that had been eating at her for so long. "Why didn't you leave sooner?" he asked, genuinely curious. "I couldn't," Lyrana replied, her eyes dark. "I didn't know how. And when you're part of something so big, something that's been ingrained in you from birth, it's hard to see another way. But now I know what I have to do." Alex nodded, absorbing her words. He could understand that. He had been a soldier too, trained to follow orders without question. But the world had a way of changing things. The reality of war, of being trapped in a system that didn't care about you, had opened his eyes. And now Lyrana, his enemy, was standing beside him, offering him the chance to escape that same system. As they talked, Alex could see the weight of the decision pressing on her. She wasn't just asking for his help. She was asking him to help her change everything she had ever known. It wasn't an easy decision for either of them, but it was one they had to make. "I don't know if I can forgive you," Alex said slowly, the words coming from a place deep inside. "But I'll help you. I'll help you get out of here." Lyrana's eyes softened with gratitude, though a flicker of doubt still lingered in her expression. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't know how much this means to me." As the days passed, their alliance grew stronger. They trained together, preparing for the moment they would make their move. The guards grew more vigilant, sensing that something was wrong, but neither Alex nor Lyrana backed down. They were determined to escape together. In the silence of the night, Alex couldn't help but wonder what would happen after they escaped. Would they be hunted? Would the Virillians hunt them down without mercy? No matter what happened, he knew one thing for sure. They had no choice now. They had become allies, and whatever happened next, they were in this together. Their escape was coming, and nothing could stop them now. The plan had been set for days, and everything had to go perfectly. Alex and Lyrana had spent every waking hour preparing for this moment. The time had finally come to escape, but the road to freedom wasn't going to be easy. The Virillians would stop at nothing to keep them on the ship, and Alex knew the risks. Still, there was no turning back now. It was the dead of night when they made their move. The corridors were quiet, too quiet for their liking. It was almost as if the entire ship had sensed something was wrong. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he moved silently through the hallways, the only sound his steady breathing. Lyrana was close behind him, her footsteps light but determined. Every movement they made was calculated, and every step had to be perfect. Their first obstacle came sooner than expected. As they rounded a corner, they encountered a group of Virillian soldiers. The guards were talking amongst themselves, unaware of the intruders in their midst. Alex's hand instinctively went to the blaster at his side, but Lyrana placed a hand on his arm, signaling for him to wait. She had a plan. In one swift movement, she activated a cloaking device they had stolen from the guards. The two of them became invisible to the naked eye, blending into the shadows. It was a risky move, but it was their only option. They slipped past the soldiers, their hearts racing as they moved through the ship's lower levels. The tension was unbearable. The farther they got, the more Alex felt like they were walking on a knife's edge. One wrong move, and it would all be over. After what felt like hours of navigating through the dark, narrow corridors, they reached the main hangar bay. This was it, the escape route. But as they approached the ship they had planned to steal, Alex's gut twisted. There were more soldiers than he had anticipated. They were everywhere, guarding the only way out. Alex turned to Lyrana, his face tight with worry. "What now?" he whispered. Lyrana didn't hesitate. "We fight." Alex nodded. They had come this far, and there was no going back now. He unsheathed his blaster and took his position, ready to cover Lyrana as she made her move. She was the one with the tactical knowledge, the one who could maneuver through the enemy lines. He was just there to protect her. They weren't alone for long. The Virilians spotted them as they advanced toward the ship. The first shot rang out, breaking the tense silence. Alex dove behind cover, returning fire as the Virilian soldiers closed in on them. Blaster bolts whizzed past, narrowly missing them as they moved from cover to cover, trying to stay one step ahead of the enemy. Lyrana was quick, her movements fluid as she weaved through the battle, taking down one soldier after another. Alex's heart raced as he watched her, amazed at how effortlessly she fought. He had seen soldiers fight before, but none with the grace and precision that she displayed. It was clear that she wasn't just a soldier, she was something more. But even with their combined skills, the battle was intense. Every time they took down one enemy, more seemed to appear. The Virilians had the advantage in numbers, and it felt like the entire ship had been alerted to their presence. The odds were stacked against them, but Alex wasn't about to give up. They couldn't afford to fail. Alex's blaster fired again, taking down another Virilian soldier who had been sneaking up on Lyrana. She glanced at him, a silent thank you passing between them. It was moments like this that made Alex realize just how far they had come. They weren't just allies, they had become a team. And together, they were unstoppable. The fight raged on. The hangar bay was a war zone, with explosions echoing in the distance as the two fought side by side. The sound of blaster fire was deafening, and the air was thick with smoke. Lyrana was fast, moving like a shadow, taking down enemy after enemy with precision. But even she couldn't keep up with the endless waves of Virilian soldiers. In the chaos, Alex's eyes flicked to the ship. They were so close, just a few more steps. But there was something else in the air now. The Virilians were getting desperate, and Alex knew that if they didn't act quickly, they would be overwhelmed. He could feel it in his gut. This was their last chance. "Lyrana," he shouted, grabbing her arm as she took down another soldier. "We need to go now." She looked at him, her eyes wide with understanding. She knew it was now or never. Without a word, she sprinted toward the ship, with Alex right behind her. They ran with everything they had, their hearts pounding in their chests. The Virilian soldiers were closing in, but they were almost there. Alex and Lyrana reached the ship just as the first wave of soldiers reached them. With a final push, they made it inside. Alex slammed the door shut behind them, locking it just in time to hear the sound of blaster fire hitting the hull of the ship. "Go!" Lyrana shouted, running to the controls. Alex scrambled to follow her, his hands shaking as he prepared to take the ship into the air. The sound of footsteps echoed from the hangar, but it was too late. The ship was already lifting off, breaking free from the hangar's grip and soaring into the vastness of space. As they ascended into the blackness of space, Alex allowed himself to breathe for the first time in what felt like forever. They had done it. They had escaped. But the battle wasn't over. The Virilians would be hunting them. But for the first time, Alex felt a glimmer of hope. They were free, and nothing could take that away from them. The stars stretched out before them, endless and vast. For the first time in a long time, Alex felt a sense of possibility. They had fought for their freedom, and now they had it. But their journey was just beginning. They would face more battles, more struggles, but they would face them together. And that was all that mattered. The stars outside the ship seemed endless as Alex and Lyrana looked out from the small cockpit. The hum of the engines filled the quiet, their escape now a reality. Their journey had taken a turn that neither of them had expected, but they had survived, and for the first time in a long time, They could breathe freely. The danger of the Virilian forces was still out there, but it no longer seemed as threatening as it had moments ago. The silence between them was comforting. There were no alarms blaring, no soldiers chasing them, no looming threat of capture. For now, it was just them, alone in the vastness of space. But even in this quiet moment, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. "Where do we go from here?" Alex asked, his voice low as he glanced over at Lyrana. She was focused on the navigation panel, her fingers moving over the controls with ease. She looked calm, but Alex could sense the tension in her posture. The weight of what they had just done hadn't quite lifted off her shoulders. "I don't know," Lyrana replied, her voice steady but with a hint of uncertainty. "We have no allies. The Virilians will be searching for us. We don't even know where we are, but we're free." Alex nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. The Virilians might be relentless, but he had faith. They had gotten this far, and they had survived. Together, they could face anything. "We'll find a place," Alex said, his voice firm. "We'll find allies, and we'll make sure no one ever has to go through what you did, what we did." Lyrana gave him a small smile, the first one he had seen in days. It wasn't much, but it was enough to show that she believed him. It gave him hope. "We'll need resources, fuel, food, information," Lyrana added, turning back to the navigation panel. She tapped a few buttons, bringing up a star map. "There's a station on the edge of the Zenari system. It's a long shot, but it's a place we could refuel. It's not too far, and they won't expect us there." Alex nodded. They had no other options. The Zenari system it was. It was a remote area, but it was also a perfect hiding spot. They would be safe there, at least for a while. But they couldn't stay in hiding forever. As the ship moved deeper into space, the stars outside the windows started to blur. The Zenari system wasn't far, but the vastness of space made even short distances feel like an eternity. The quiet was almost too much for Alex. He needed to do something, anything, to keep his mind busy. He stood up and walked over to the small kitchenette in the corner of the ship, opening a compartment to grab some food. It wasn't much, just a few protein bars and some rehydrated meals. But it would do for now. "Here," he said, tossing a protein bar toward Lyrana. "Thanks," she muttered, catching it without looking. She unwrapped it but didn't eat, instead staring out at the stars. Her mind was somewhere else. Alex could tell. Her body was here with him, but her thoughts were far away. For a moment, Alex didn't know what to say. The silence felt heavy, but he didn't want to push her. He understood. They had both been through so much. There was no need for words when they both knew what the other was feeling. Instead, he took a seat next to her. They were both staring out at the stars now, lost in their own thoughts. They didn't need to speak. The bond between them was strong enough to fill the space between them without saying a word. But as the hours passed, Alex began to realize that their escape wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. They would have to fight. There were still battles ahead, and this time, they would be fighting for something bigger than just their own survival. They had a chance to make a real difference. "How do we stop them?" Alex finally asked, breaking the silence. "The Virilians, we know they won't stop. So how do we fight back?" Lyrana didn't immediately respond. Her eyes flickered to the star map again, and for a long time, she was silent. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "We need to unite the galaxy. We need to find other people who are willing to fight back. There are more like us. There have to be. There are people who are tired of being ruled by the Virilians, people who are ready to stand up." Alex felt a spark of hope ignite inside him. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. They had a purpose now. They had a mission. "That's what we'll do," Alex said, determination in his voice. "We'll find them. We'll unite them. We'll show the Virilians that they can't control us. That we will fight." Lyrana nodded, her eyes bright with something Alex hadn't seen in her for a long time: hope. For the first time since they had escaped, he could see the fire in her again, the same fire that had kept her going even when everything seemed lost. "I believe we can do it," Lyrana said softly. "But it's going to be a long road. We'll have to build an army, one person at a time. We'll have to fight battles, make allies, and earn the trust of the people who are still out there." Alex took a deep breath. It was going to be hard, no doubt about it. But they had each other, and that was enough to keep going. They weren't just fighting for freedom anymore. They were fighting for a future. "We'll take it one step at a time," Alex said, his voice steady. "We'll do this together." The ship continued to fly through the darkness of space toward the Zenari system. It was a new beginning for both of them, a new chapter in their journey. They had faced impossible odds and come out on top. Now, they were ready to face whatever came next. And this time, they weren't just surviving. They were fighting for something greater, together.